Yo, what's going on, you guys? This is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, here with another video on Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. The last video I did in regards to this game had a pretty decent reception. You guys really enjoyed my explanation on how Marvel and Sony have been going about their whole partnership and why Arc System Works was ultimately picked to do a Marvel fighting game as opposed to the usual such as Capcom. And today I thought it would be a good idea to do a video on who should be included in this game that's going to be stacked to the brim with Marvel characters. So yeah, but before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to ask you guys to do me the biggest favor and like this video. Yeah, I know it's a bit annoying getting this request at the very beginning of this video before you watch it in its entirety, but YouTube's algorithm encourages it. So if you rock with your boy and you think I'm gonna bring you that awesome content, then smash that like button. But if you just so happen to be new to the channel and you feel like I've wasted 10 minutes of your time that you can't get back, then feel free to retract that like and give it a dislike. Just rate the video. But as you guys are aware, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls is making a lot of noise in the gaming space. Not just that space, but one in particular, which is the fighting game community, which is a very vocal community, because anytime they express themselves, they're going to let you know what they like and dislike. And I feel like there is a lot to like about this game, but there is some things that some people are going to have problems with, mainly with it being a 4v4, because team-based fighters has built this reputation of being nothing more than beautiful noise. While the visuals look pleasing to the eyes, the overall mechanics can be very chaotic. Like, you're dealing with a lot of characters who pop on the screen at once, and that can be very disorientating to some players. They just aren't willing to learn the ins and outs of each individual character and how they work with others. So they would much rather have a classic 1v1 fighter as opposed to a 2v2 and upward. Even though I am a fan of the genre, I would be lying if I say I'm not intimidated by the fact that it's going to be a 4v4 this time around, which is probably the most we've ever had out of any team-based combat game. I feel like there's a lot that Arc System is going to have to work on to make this feel conducive to that particular genre, because they are running the gambit of making it very complex for even high-level players of these types of games. I for one am already worried about how the tag system is going to work. Like, am I going to have to properly set up certain characters, or maybe I'm just going to have to tag through each character until I get to the right one? And then there's the assist mechanic and how that's going to function. Is it going to be too overpowered, or is it going to feel cumbersome based on the button that each character is appointed to? There's also been chatter in regards to how the characters are going to function in this game compared to that of a MVC game, because not only has team-based combat always been synonymous with Marvel vs. Capcom, also the Marvel characters in general. And since we've been playing with these characters such as Doom for 20 plus years within that particular brand of video games, then it's going to feel a bit weird doing things out of the norm, such as foot dives with them. Like, I'm pretty sure that Arc System Works isn't trying to make a Marvel vs. Capcom like video game. Like, I remember them saying this in regards to Dragon Ball FighterZ when a lot of fans were comparing it to MVC, and they mentioned how weird it would be seeing characters such as Goku fight Krillin in reference to the large difference of power between the two characters, and how it only made sense to make it a 3-on-3 fighter to complement each character's abilities. And I'm pretty sure they have that same philosophy with Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, especially considering the fact that PlayStation reached out to them on behalf of Marvel to do a fighting game with their characters. But it's just one of those things that they can't ignore the big elephant in the room. They have to make it a point to acknowledge that Marvel has already had these characters in a similar light, especially with that genre, and they're going to have to make a concerted effort to make characters such as Spider-Man, Captain America, and Iron Man feel new and fresh with their gameplay, as opposed to making them feel like copy and pasted variants from Marvel vs. Capcom, which I think that they're ultimately going to do. It seems like they're on the right track. Not to mention that since we aren't going to be using any Capcom characters, it gives Arc Sys the chance to implement characters who have never been seen in a MVC game, let alone a 3v3 fighter, which, as you can imagine, is going to be a hefty amount of heroes and villains from the Marvel universe. And since this is a 4v4 fighting game as opposed to a 3v3, I think it's obvious that they're going to have to not only take from the Marvel roster, they're actually going to have to take characters who belong to certain factions from the Marvel roster. We're talking teams, groups, and alliances, because if you're going to be playing 4v4, there's only so much you can do with a handful of characters. You have to have a very robust roster when it comes to this game, or it's going to get very boring very fast. So to keep this video from being very long, I'm going to just name off some teams that I feel like should be added in this, starting off with the Annihilators, an overpowered group of space-based characters who will punch your shit in. This is a group that I've been wanting to see for a long time make it into a fighting game, and they have to a certain extent in things like mobile fighting games, but I want to see something with some technicality to it. And I also want to see characters who look like they would just be very cool on screen, such as the Silver Surfer, a character that's been around for I don't know how long but has never been featured in a 3v3 fighting game or a Marvel vs. Capcom. He's basically a Swiss Army knife on steroids who has the power cosmic at his fingertips and can do different things with it, such as manipulate his size and manipulate things such as the weather and manifest fire out of thin air. He's also been shown to be one of the strongest characters within the Marvel universe, and his strength rivals that of the Hulk even when he uses his limitless rage. But his bread and butter would obviously have to be his surfboard, which can do a multitude of things. As you guys are aware, this thing is very much an extension of him and has its own mind, and this thing allows him to go extremely fast, up to light speed. So yeah, this is definitely a character I would like to see in motion in a fighting game. Next up in this group is Quasar, who was worthy of wielding the quantum bands. This guy is able to do a lot of things because of these bands, like have super strength, as well as manipulate different types of energy such as concussive force, heat, light, radio waves, and cosmic energy. He can also use the quantum bands to alter his strength to where he's able to knock out a watcher. So if you're seeing the pattern, this is another guy that's like on one of those Superman type levels. But anyways, the next up is Beta Ray Bill, who many consider a Thor knockoff, but I think this guy, he has a lot of potential here because he was already strong before he got the Stormbreaker. The guy was already a cyborg who was said to be able to destroy moons with his bare hands, and he was even able to go head up with Thor before he even got the hammer. Besides the Stormbreaker, he also has the Twilight Sword that allows him to do things such as manipulate light and energy, as well as amplify his already pre-existing powers. And last but certainly not least is Gladiator, who is basically just this Superman ripoff. I can't say it any other way. This guy basically possesses all the abilities that you would expect with Superman, such as super strength, super speed, and even super breath. Not to mention he can fly, but I just feel like he's a cool character that just doesn't get utilized enough in Marvel fighting games, and he would be a worthy candidate to have in Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. But moving on, the next group we have is the Carnage family, and I don't know what has taken them so long to include Carnage in any other games which include MVC, but now is the time to do so, and I feel like Arc System Works can elevate this character. He's already a cool character as is, who possesses all the abilities that you would expect from characters such as Spider-Man and Venom, but his physical strength actually exceeds both of them, allowing him to easily lift 80 tons. But his bread and butter would have to be his biomatter manipulation, where he could essentially change his body into tendrils, claws, and even these massive blades, and he would make for an excellent zoning and close quarters fighter, man. Like, you can actually use some of the projectiles like to shoot off his body, as well as use his long arms that can turn into these blades to play keep away, but you can also do some damage on the inside as well. So yeah, definitely put him in there. The next character that we have is Shriek. She's basically a package deal when it comes to Carnage. We know that these two are like Bonnie and Clyde. She's his ride or die, and she possesses the power to manipulate loud noises, which says a lot because loud noises is the biggest weakness of Carnage. But I guess, you know, something else is his big weakness too, and that's a nice looking chick like Shriek. The last character that I have in this group would have to be the Doppelganger, which is basically like a clone Spider-Man with 6 arms. And this is another character that boasts similar powers to Spider-Man, but I just feel like he would be a cool addition to have in the game, especially since it's the Carnage family. You can't have a Carnage family without the Doppelganger. But moving on, the next team that we have is the Fantastic Four, which would be a no-brainer to introduce considering the fact that they have a new movie coming around the corner, not to mentioning that this is the first family of Marvel. This is arguably the group that actually kick-started the Marvel universe, so they definitely need to be in, especially for this particular game, because I feel like their over-the-top wacky looking powers would just translate well with a Arc Systems like touch, especially the character of Reed Richards, who people kind of compare to that of Miss Marvel, who's already been confirmed for this game. They are similar in a lot of ways, but Reed Richards, he can do so much more than Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel is a polymorphic character, by the way, but Reed possesses plasticity, which allows him to convert his body to an extremely malleable state and elongate his body parts. If he wants to get an edge in a fight, he can transform his body into these bludgeoning weapons such as huge mallets and hammers, as well as increase the size of his fist. Or if he wants to, he can convert his body into a trampoline-like state, which allows him to launch his teammates or redirect incoming projectiles. I can honestly see Reed being used as a defense and offensive type, especially when it comes to assist moves, right? Where you want to deflect a move, you could send Reed out and he can transform into his giant balloon state and basically take some of that damage. Or he can be used in a Dalsim type of way where he plays keep away by extending his arms. I also believe his wife Sue Storm can play a similar role since she possesses these psionic force fields that could essentially aid her in defense, as well as apply pressure to the opponent since she can convert them into these shock waves. As you are aware, she can also make her body turn invisible, which I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the game. They might do it in the form of something like a reptile style from Mortal Kombat where you can't necessarily see the character, but whoever is controlling her knows exactly where she is and can inflict damage that way. But anyways, next up is her brother Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, whose powers were pretty self-explanatory. I remember when I was a kid playing the Killer Instinct game, I would always select this character by the name of Cinder, and I would always wonder, okay, they have this character that can shoot out fire. Man, how cool would it be if that was the Human Torch? Because that was essentially all he was. That's the vibe that I'm getting when I picture Johnny Storm in a 3v3 type of game, where you have this character that can essentially shoot out projectiles as well as utilize his flaming body as a heat-seeking missile. I can definitely see him as this offensive type that applies a lot of pressure to his opponent, as well as do things like apply a lot of chip damage based on how long his flames linger on the opponents as well. He's definitely going to be a very hot-headed and very flashy type of character. But last but certainly not least, we have the Thing, who is basically the powerhouse of the Fantastic Four, and his powers are pretty self-explanatory. Super strength, advanced durability, very impervious to damage. He's definitely going to have a playstyle that's similar to characters like the Hulk and Colossus, and maybe even a little bit of that Juggernaut in there, like where he does this tackle. And I can see him lifting these heavy objects that can double as melee weapons as well as projectiles. I'm hoping that ArcSys just goes all out on these guys, similar to how they've been done in things like Marvel Rivals, where they just inject so much of their style into them. And I'm also hoping that we get like some team synergy attacks with some of these teams, especially the Fantastic Four. Like, there are so many different things that they've done together in the comics that I feel would translate well to Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. But next up, we have the Brotherhood of Mutants, which is an evil team of mutants who's been rivaling the X-Men for decades and are devoted to mutant superiority over humans. After seeing Storm in action in the trailer, it was pretty much a given that other mutants were going to be featured in as well, particularly the X-Men, and I'm pretty sure their rogues gallery is also going to be following suit. Characters such as Magneto, who just so happens to be the leader of the Brotherhood, but I'm not necessarily going to be highlighting him for this particular video because I think it's obvious that he's going to be in the game at some point. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't add him, especially given how much fury we inflicted on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite for not including characters such as Magneto. So yeah, instead of highlighting the leader of the Brotherhood of Mutants, I want to talk about the core members such as Quicksilver, who is not only the son of Magneto but also the speedster of the group. And I feel like this type of character has been missing in Marvel vs. Capcom for the longest time. Like, they never focus on characters that are super fast, but given the background that Arc System Works has with characters such as this, I wouldn't mind if they took from the playbook of characters that they worked on, such as Hit from Dragon Ball FighterZ, where you have these super fast melee combos as well as these counters that activate a move upon getting touched, especially since Quicksilver is known to have superhuman reflexes and his practical reaction time is several times faster than that of a normal human. But anyways, the next character I would add is Pyro, who just so happens to be a fire user. And I know you guys are going to say that I already added a character such as this one, but you guys got to keep in mind that just because a character has similar properties doesn't mean they're going to function the same. Pyro just so happens to have fire manipulation, meaning that he can actually transform his fires into anything that he wants, whether it be giant birds, horses, or even people. So this guy would make for a perfect zoning type of character, especially for tag and assists. Anyways, the next character I have is Blob, which is another powerhouse character. This dude right here, he can inflict a lot of damage, but he also can take a lot of damage since he can essentially absorb kinetic energy of any type. And the last character we have in this group is Toad, who is a character that's very much a jack of all trades. He can play as a close quarters combat type character, but he can also double as a zoner type since he can spit out things at you as well as lick out his tongue and inflict damage. I can see him being the anchor character of any group that you put him in. Now, if I'm going to mention the Brotherhood of Mutants, then you already know that I can't go without bringing up X-Men that I want in this game. And this list is strictly going to be based off of characters who I wish were in the MVC games, but now have the opportunity to see them in a similar game such as Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. And I'm going to start off with my main pick, which is Nightcrawler. Yes, I originally was going to add this guy in based on his group Excalibur, but I was like, let's just go ahead and keep him him with the team that he originally came from, which is the X-Men. This is yet another character who I always questioned wasn't in the original Marvel vs. Capcom games or the X-Men games in general, because he seemed like an obvious choice. This is a cool character who everybody just loves to see in action. Not to mention he was always featured in the side-scroller beat-em-up X-Men games in the 90s, so I always wanted to play with him. He has the ability to teleport, not to mention that he's a master combatant with his hands as well as blades, and I would love to see him wield triple blades. 2 blades in hand, 1 on his tail. So add him in there, Arc System Works. The next character would be Jubilee, an X-Men member who was in games like X-Men vs. Street Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom, but was reduced to being an assist character. Yes, we never got a chance to actually play with her, and I feel like this would be the proper time to do so, especially since it's been years since the character was first introduced, where her powers weren't necessarily as powerful as the other mutants, but now she's developed into a very capable character who not only possesses the power to make sparks, but can also make these sonic boom rings and detonate bombs on a subatomic level. Another character would be Beast, who I feel like would be very fun to play with. This is a guy that you can actually make stick to the walls, or in this case stick to the screens, as well as be very powerful when it comes to actual physical combat, because we know he possesses super strength, so you can make him do things like a thunderclap, or you can make him strike the ground, and you can make him very agile like somebody like Blanca would be in Street Fighter. But anyways, the final character I would add to this would have to be the leader of the X-Men himself, Professor Charles Xavier. Not Cyclops, I'm pretty sure he's going to be added in eventually, but yes, Xavier. He would definitely be another person that I don't think people would expect to see in this game, but he absolutely should be. Like, if Magneto can be added into these fighting games, why can't his arch nemesis slash old buddy, Professor X? And you already know what's coming with this dude. He's going to be doing a lot of telepathic moves where he can essentially play with your mind and make you see illusions, as well as a technique called Mind Blast where he can attack your brain by sending out enormous amounts of information. And in the later comics, his powers further evolved to where he's able to use telekinesis. And I already know what you guys are going to say, but this guy is basically defenseless. He can't really do much since he's bound to a wheelchair. But it's important to point out that there are versions of the character that can walk and are very capable when it comes to fighting. But if they do go with the wheelchair version of the character, then it would be nothing for them to give him moves that feature characters from the X-Men team, like X-Men characters who don't make it to the roster, but they are in the game as actual moves for Professor Xavier. But moving on, the next team that I have is the Marvel Defenders, which consist of street level superheroes as opposed to the ones who take on the bigger threats. I think each one of these members would be a good fit for Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, starting with Daredevil, a character that should have been featured in a fighting game a long time ago. And like I said, I am aware that Daredevil does get utilized in other fighting games such as Marvel Contest of Champions, but I'm talking about a legit fighting game, not one touchscreen mobile fighting game. And it looks like Double D would fit well within Tokon Fighting Souls because he's a master combatant. He obviously has acrobatics that give him the edge that he needs, especially when it comes to evading attacks, but you can't go wrong with his stick attacks that range from batons to actual staffs and nunchucks. I can easily see him being this close quarters combat that doubles as a zone type, since his stick can actually extend and keep away characters. The next character we have is Iron Fist. Yes, another obvious choice. A master of all the different kinds of martial arts, particularly that of Kunlun, Iron Fist is the ultimate combatant. One of his key features would have to be the obvious, which is his Iron Fist, which is basically a energy or chi that he's able to concentrate directly into his fist, which allows him to punch through practically anything. Some of the most impervious characters such as Luke Cage have found themselves looking up at the lights after taking a blow from Iron Fist. Which leads me to Luke Cage. We gotta add this guy in because he's the powerhouse of the group. He's super strong, can take a lot of damage, and a very skilled street fighter. I'm also going to throw in Jessica Jones as well, since they're a package deal, and if they don't add him, they could easily add her since she's also a powerhouse type character. But anyways, this next batch of characters I'm going to mention aren't necessarily on teams with each other. They're just characters that I need to get out of the way because I don't want this video to be longer than it already is. And that's going to be the Green Goblin, since he's basically Spider-Man's arch nemesis, as well as course, Miles Morales, who is essentially the secondary Spider-Man that everybody has taken a liking to, especially over the years where we've seen things like Into the Spider-Verse. I feel like he can have some of the moves that Spider-Man has while also having his own unique style and his powers, which are basically bioelectricity. We're gonna also throw the Punisher in there, since this guy always gets neglected, even though he's been shown to be a capable fighter and he has an extensive arsenal of weapons. The next character I would add in would be Blade, since he's another character who often gets overlooked in fighting games. Not only is he a powerful vampire or half human half vampire, he also possesses a heavy arsenal of weapons and a master martial artist. Next up is Dr. Octopus, which is another villain that I feel like would be translated very well in the Arc System Works art style. Like, I can see them going crazy with his 4 mechanical arms. And that's all I got for you guys today. Like I said, there are a lot of other characters that could be added to this, but I just wanted to focus on characters that I haven't seen in Marvel vs. Capcom or any other 3v3 games. Obviously, they're going to be adding characters such as Wolverine and other big name characters, but yeah, I just want to focus on characters who I really feel like need to be in this game, so yeah. But anyways, if you guys would be kind enough to let me know what you thought about my list, as well as give your thoughts on who you think should be in the game. As always, I ask you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you just so happen to enjoy this video, then I would appreciate it if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.